The Inns and Pubs of Caistor. People are often amazed to find that the quiet little town of Caistor has had in its history something like 40 inns, public houses and beer houses, although not all existing at the same time. They also varied in status, from major meeting places to small, humble inns and beer houses. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, Caistor was a major market town, with a wide range of shops and 4 marketplaces serving the needs of people in northern Lincolnshire. It had a quarterly sheep market, which was at one time the largest in the country, and it also held a regular horse market, beast market, and the annual hiring fair. The peak time for the Inns of Caistor was in the early 19th century, when there were about 20 inns, and by 1913 that had declined to 6. Reasons vary, but by the mid-19th century Caistor had a police presence, which hit the less respectable outlets, and also at this time the temperance movement was gaining influence. Let's have a look at Caistor's former hostelries. Here in the horse market, on the site of these 1960s flats, was a lodging house and a beer house called the Nag's Head. And at the bottom of Fountain Street was Fountain Inn, another beer house which is known to have been here from 1871 to 1910 as an outlet for John Christian's brewery of Market Raisin. Was this an example of a pub owned by a brewery? Making our way up the hill towards the town centre, we pass the Victoria Inn, which existed from 1833 to 1919. Crossing the road, we see the Plough, an inn which closed in 1865. Interestingly, it then became a temperance hotel, reflecting the growing interest in Methodism and the temperance movement. But by 1907, it had become the Westgate Livery Stables. Imposing Westgate House, now empty, has had the various identities over its many years: the Windmill in 1722, the Crane, the Pied Bull and the Wheatsheaf, ceasing trading in 1866. Down the side of the building you can see from the brickwork how it's been extended and probably had a thatched roof. From 1810 to 1835, the Marquis of Granby stood on Bob's Lane. An interesting tale has survived about this beer house. In 1826, a highway robbery took place near Grimsby, when 22-year-old George Green stole £5 and silver to the value of 7 shillings and sixpence from 60-year-old John Lawrence as they were climbing over a stile at Irby. But fortunately, John's son apprehended George in the Granby and found the money along with a pistol, slugs, shot and powder. In court, George, because he didn't use violence, avoided capital punishment, but he was transported for life. At the top of Bob's Lane, on South Street, stand many of the Caistor hostelries. On the right, the arched building was the White Horse, a fine inn with a brew house, livery stables and 4 cottages to the rear. From 1718 until 1911 it stood here, later renamed the Black Horse. Carriers used to set off from here to Brigg and the surrounding villages. The landlords here, as is often the case of many of the inns in Caistor, had other means of support, because often the inn didn't provide enough income. This landlord was a brewer and a cattle dealer. On the other side of South Street stood the old Reindeer Inn from 1792 to 1841. And immediately opposite it is the new Reindeer Inn, opened not long after the old Reindeer closed. Almost next door to the Old Reindeer was the Angel Inn, known to have existed in 1690, a large inn with a yard, stabling, a brewhouse and land. Next door is Caistor's only surviving pub, the White Hart. From 1793 it has been the Nag's Head, the Sloop and the Slip. The inn provided a bus which used to meet the train from Moortown. In fact, in 1861 the landlord was killed by a train at Moortown. The Griffin, which used to stand in this part of South Street, was on the site of the present War Memorial and was then rebuilt on land where this fine Victorian building now stands. South Street runs into the Corn Market, where the King's Head existed from 1812 to 1880. It was a substantial inn, where the Bishop of Lincoln used to stay when he visited the town. George Haddesley recorded in 1870 an interesting competition which took place at the King's Head during the Caistor Statute. To participate in the smoking match, the competitors sat outside on the pavement with long clay pipes filled with tobacco. A timekeeper was appointed, and the prize, thought to be a leg of mutton, went to the man who finished first. Opposite the King's Head was one of the most prestigious inns in Caistor, the George Inn. Built in 1755, but now demolished, it was in the 19th century a social centre. People met in the assembly rooms, cards were played, various meetings were held, amongst others the Court of Sewers, the Caistor Canal Company and the Matrons Society. When John Day gave up his post as landlord of the George, his father, John Henry Day of Harmston, Lincoln, took over his position. John Henry Day had been the owner of the famous Durham ox, a fine steer weighing, at its death in 1807, 189 stones. That's 1,200 kilograms. John Henry Day travelled the country with his steer in a carriage specially made to transport him, drawn by 4 horses, and exhibiting him at agricultural fairs and other events. A number of pubs around the country are named the Durham Ox because the ox was exhibited there. Turning left down the High Street, one can see the imposing Victorian Public Hall, which was built on the site of the King's Arms, which became the Falconers, owned by the Duke of St Albans. The inn had a bowling green behind it. Next door is the site of the oldest inn in Caistor, dating from 1682 and still serving until the 1990s. In the past, it was known for its excellent stabling and coach houses and hosted a range of important meetings, both inside and on the land behind the public house. This was the site of some of the earliest Lincolnshire shows. The Lincolnshire Co-op bought the site and developed it into the town's new supermarket. Wishing to preserve the building, the architects incorporated the structure of the Talbot frontage into the new building. And interestingly, the excavations in the land behind the Talbot unearthed a major Roman cemetery. The Red Lion Inn occupies a large site facing the Talbot and the marketplace. Built in 1748, it's no longer an inn and has undergone a major transformation into smart residential development since it ceased trading in the 1970s. This inn had similar status to the George, with a ballroom, a location for public buildings such as prosecutions and property sales, and a livery stable business. The first motor bus to Grimsby set off from the Red Lion in 1905, and the bus used to meet most of the trains at Moortown, making 4 journeys a day. One particular driver, Bussy Borman, sometimes may have overindulged in the Skipworth Arms at Moortown Station, with the result that if he was running late, the journey from Caistor could be a perilous gallop. The final pub on this tour is now a shop at the corner of Bank Lane. It began as the Bricklayers' Arms in 1691, and when it was demolished in the 19th century to create the bank, the footpath was widened to allow the passage of carriages to the imposing building on the other side of Bank Lane, Caistor House. The historical records show that most of the public houses of Caistor have been established, changed and disappeared. The town, particularly till the mid-19th century, offered many places where people could meet and drink. Most of the inns and pubs were clustered not far from the town centre. At one end of the scale were the renowned public buildings of high status, providing a good quality environment for social, economic and political gatherings. At the other end were the humble beer houses, offering places where people, mainly men, could socialise and have a drink away from their menial homes. Over the years, however, changes in the way people spent their leisure time meant that pubs and inns became less profitable, and today only one pub remains. Do come and visit Caistor and enjoy this walk for yourselves. Thank you.